Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to the Sri Vidya Temple's online classes in chanting. We're currently doing, this is our kind of a refresher course on the fundamentals of chanting. What are the, critical rules that we need to understand for pronunciation? So last time we focused on Akshara Shuddhi of the Sanskrit Varnamala. And today we'll just finish up a little bit of that. And then once we're done, we'll head into the next area of focus, which is Matra Shuddhi. Okay, so I'll start with the Ganapati and Saraswati prayer, and then we'll start. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Aim Shri Sharada Parameshwarye Namaha. All right, so let me share my screen and go to my slides. Okay, this actually, I want to minimize. Minimize this one. Okay, so here we have the Aksharamala shown as the Matruka Bijas in the typical sequence that we would do them if we were chanting them as just part of the Varnamala or Anyasa or something like that. So maybe Anupama Amma, if you can start us off with the review, I'll say some of the sounds and then you can repeat after me.
Yeah, sure. Amma, are you sharing the screen there?
Are you able to see it?
No. No.
Yeah, I can see it.
Or maybe I need to change to...
We can see it.
Yes, Amma. Yeah.
Okay, are you seeing it now?
Yes, Amma. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so I'll do the first 6 vowels. Im, im, im,
Im, im,
Good.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
You can just do it once. We'll
Okay.
just go a little quickly.
Okay.
Rum, 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 rum.
Rum, 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 rum.
Good. Aim, I'm, om, aum.
Aim, ein, om, aum.
Good. Aha.
Aha.
Right. And so these are Visarga and Anuswara, which have a very variable pronunciation. But if we were chanting this as part of Nyasa or Shatchakra Japam or some practice like that, typically we just say them as aha as a, just to indicate the sounds. If anybody has been, taught a different pronunciation by their guru, for example, as part of some sadhana, please, continue with that pronunciation. I'm just sort of giving a more conventional approach to the pronunciation. Okay, so let's go to the next line, which are the kantya sounds. Gum, cum, gum, gum, num.
Come, come, gum, gum, num.
Good. And now the palatal sounds or tarlavya sounds. Chum, chum, jum, jum, nyam.
chum, chum, jum, jhum, nyam.
Good. Now we'll do the row of the murdhanya sounds or the cerebral sounds. Tum, tum, erdum, erdhum, ernam.
Tum, thum, dum, dhum, ram.
Good. Okay, so now if Anilija Amma, if you'd like to repeat
Yes,
the
Amma.
sounds.
Yes,
Okay.
Amma.
All right, so now we'll go on to the dantya or the dental sounds. Thum, thum, dum, dhum, num.
Thum, thum, dum, dhum, nam.
Good. And now the oshkya sounds or the labial sounds. Bum, pum, bum, bum, mum.
Bum, hum, bum, bum, mum.
Good. So now in the final line, I'll do the first four sounds, the semi-consonants or semi-vowels. Yum, lum, rum, vum.
Yum, lum, rum, vum.
Good. And now the next four, the sibilants or S sounds, or Ushman. Shum, shum, sum, hum.
Shum, shum, sum, hum.
Good. And do you normally look at the English script or Devanagari or something else?
I usually look at the Devanagari.
Okay, so I apologize for making you use the English, but I think you understand the order. Okay, and then the final two sounds, erlam, ksham.
Lum, shum.
Okay, good. So this, again, this, just to review, this L sound, which is different from the dental la, this is sort of, you can think of it as a murdhanya L sound. So it's pronounced in the same tongue position as this row here, da, ta, erda, erda, erna, or sha, and so on. So it's like a retroflex or a murdhanya L sound. And then this final one, it's often included in the Varnamala, even though technically it's a combination of two sounds. But as a sort of a yogic or a mystical aspect, it's included. So this contains the ka sound combined with sha. This is the same sha as Vishnu sha, ksham. Okay, so the way you pronounce it is by combining the ka with sha. All right, so just wanted to review that. So any questions at all on the Varnamala before I go on? Okay. All right, so now I want to talk about Anusvara. Anusvara is written in English as or English transliteration as the M with a little dot. In Devanagari, it's generally just a small dot above the line. And then in Telugu, it would be like a circle. And in Tamil, it's challenging because many times people will just put the same character as ma, which is not really always accurate, and it's confusing because it looks like a consonant is there. So that can be a little bit confusing, but that's where, anyone who's using a Tamil script should definitely be listening to either a teacher or a good recording to understand which sound it's supposed to be. All right, so the essence of how you pronounce Anuswara is that when it's combined with another sound, say in the same syllable, when we look at the examples, it will be, it'll make more sense. But you need to look at the sound after the anuswara, figure out the place of articulation of that sound, meaning is it a throat sound? Is it a palatal sound? Is it a labial sound? And so on. And then use the nasal sound that corresponds to that location. So I'm going to go back to where I had all of my consonants being shown. And so if we look at the first 5 columns here, you can see that the throat sounds or the kantya sounds at the top, ka, ka, ga, ga, and then the nasal for the kantya sounds is nga. And then again, this is the nya for the palatal sounds, erna for murdhanya, and so on. So if anuswara is combined with one of these sounds, you just need to think, what is the corresponding nasal sound in that group? And that's how you pronounce that anuswara. Okay, so if we go back to some examples. So say you had a word like the Sanskrit word for egg. And in Devanagari, you can see that it's written with this little dot. You need to, so the anuswara is combined with a rda sound. This is the murdhanya rda. So you need to think, what is the corresponding nasal sound that goes with rda? And that would be erna. Therefore, this word is pronounced as arnda, arnda. In the next example, we have anuswara combined with ka, which is a kantya or throat sound. So if we think of the nasal sound that corresponds to the ka, ga, ga sounds, it's the nga. So we have the pronunciation shankara, shankara. So you can see it's very easy to pronounce the nasal in the same location as the sound that's coming right after it. So that's what's the easiest thing to do. So the anuswara being pronounced in that way is very much to make the chanting flow and make it easier so that your tongue isn't, moving in a very awkward way. Okay, then we have a word where the anuswara is combined with a palatal sound, cha. And so the corresponding nasal is nya. And so we have pancha. Okay. So these are all examples where the anuswara is coming inside one word. It's coming in the middle of a word. Even if the anuswara comes at the end of one word and then there's another separate word after it, we still can follow this rule. So if we look at this first word combined with brahmarni, the anuswara is, you ignore the space, it's followed by the sound ba in brahmarni. So you think, what is the nasal sound for ba? And it's ma. So therefore you have amrutam brahmarni, amrutam brahmarni. So ma goes with ba. Is everyone clear on the examples of anuswara here and how we apply this rule of pronunciation? Okay, seems like everyone's good. Okay, so before I get to some sort of examples that we can work on, I want to go through Visarga. So Visarga is the character where in English it looks like the H with a dot. In Devanagari, it's the 2 dots, 2 dots. So this sound, it can come in the middle of a line, or sometimes it may appear at the end of a line. And those are 2 different cases, and we treat it differently depending on whether it's in the middle or the end of a line. So first, we'll look at what happens when it's in the middle of a line. Just like anuswara, we need to look at the sound that follows the visarga. if the visarga is followed by one of the S sounds, Ushman or a sibilant, like sa, sha, sha, and so on, the visarga will be pronounced in the same exact way as that sibilant sound. So that's one situation. Then if the visarga is followed by either pa or pa, it's pronounced like a fa sound, like fa in the word if. And there's a special term for that sound, which is upadhamaniya. Upadhamaniya, that's the like a Vedic term for that sound, for visarga when it's pronounced in that way. Now, if the sound following the visarga is either ka or ka, it will be pronounced as a special sound called jikva mulya, which means at the root of the tongue. So this sound is not really in English, but you can hear it in Scottish and maybe Hebrew to some extent. And so it sounds like so if you've ever heard the Scottish word loch, as in the Loch Ness monster, that is the sound of jikva mulya. So the way that you make the sound is think that you are breathing breath out. So it's just like a sound, the breath is coming out. And then if you were to narrow or constrict the throat a little bit, but not all the way, you'll hear a stronger ha sound. So as I constrict my throat, just listen to how it sounds. Okay, so that sound is the sound of jikva mulya. And we'll do some examples. Okay. So the interesting thing is that in some of the earlier versions of different scripts that were used for Sanskrit, like before Devanagari, there were some special characters for this Upadmaniya and Jikva Mulya. So nowadays, it's just the same two dots wherever Visarga occurs. But in previous versions of Devanagari or previous scripts before that existed, there were special characters for these sounds. Okay, so now I'm going to explain some examples of how Visarga sounds when it's in the middle of a line. Okay, so some of these are from Rudram, which you guys will recognize. So if we have Namaha plus Shambhave, we can see that there's a Visarga followed by a Sha sound. So Sha is a sibilant. Therefore, this Visarga will be pronounced just like this sound, Sha. And so what we get is Namashambhave. Namashambhave. Okay, in the next example, we have Tannaha followed by Shanmukha. Shanmukha. So in this example, Sha is another type of sibilant or S sound. So this Visarga will be pronounced just like this following Sha. So what we end up with is Tannashanmukha. Tannashanmukha. Okay. All right, so in the next example, we have Namaha followed by Kakubhaya. So notice this is a ka sound. So we have that special rule where the Visarga has that unique Jikva Mulya sound. And so we have Namah Kakubhaya. Namah Kakubhaya. So hopefully you can hear it. It's a very soft sound because the vocal cords are not vibrating. So it's just a breath sound, like a strong breathy sound. Namah Kakubhaya. Namah Ka. It does take a bit of practice to get used to half closing the throat. So it's not totally open, it's not totally closed. And it does take some practice for that to feel normal and natural. So you can practice that a little bit. And, as always, listen to a recording of Chalakere brothers chanting Se Rudram, if you're familiar with that. And listen for that sound. Listen for that and really try to understand how they're making it. Okay, and finally we have Namaha plus Prataranaya. So we have Visarga followed by the Pa sound in Prataranaya. And so this is pronounced as Namah Prataranaya. Namah Prataranaya. Okay, so that's the Upadmaniya sound of Visarga before Pa or Pa. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. And this is for Visarga when it's followed immediately by another word. All right. So now the final case we have to talk about is how we pronounce Visarga when it's at the end of a line. And the way that we know that the line has ended is that you'll see this little bar, this vertical bar. It looks the same in most transliteration styles. And this is called as danda in Sanskrit, which just means stick. And you can see it looks like a stick. Okay, so if we look at the first example, the final syllable has the vowel I plus visarga. So this will get pronounced as shantihi. So there's an echoing of the I sound, which is right before the visarga, and we get shantihi, shantihi. Now, if this visarga were following an O, like in this example, then what we have is jantoho, jantoho. Okay, so it's just echoing the previous vowel sound with a h sound as well. So the only tricky part is when the visarga is added to something like ow or I, the sound of I. So if we have a word like this bijakshara, this will get pronounced as this sauhu, sauhu. Okay, so it's like a hu ended to the end of the sao, the ow sound. And if it were, imagine that there was a word ending in I plus the visarga, that would sound like I-hi, I-hi. Okay, so any questions on visarga? Okay, so let's take a look at our examples. Okay, so maybe Charu Auntie, if you want to try a couple of these.
Yeah.
Charu Auntie, are you available?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So if you look at the first line and you want to think of how you would pronounce this anuswara here, or if you ever look at Devanagari, are you comfortable looking at either English or
Both is
Devanagari?
okay. Devanagari is
Okay.
good for me.
So how would you pronounce these two words?
Amritam Devo,
Just say it one more time.
Amritam Devo.
Good. So because the anuswara is followed by the,
The.
which is a dental sound, this anuswara we can pronounce as a na sound, a dental na. So it becomes Amrutan Devo, Amrutan Devo.
Amritam
Okay.
Devo.
So in the second example, how would you say this word?
Manjari. Yeah.
Good.
Manjari.
Manjari. So here we have anuswara followed by a ja sound, which is a palatal tarlavya sound. So we use the corresponding nasal in the tarlavya group, which is that nya sound. So we get manjari, manjari. Okay, so it's very simple. You just think wherever your tongue is going already to pronounce this following sound, you just keep it there and make the nasal. Okay. Now, this is an example from Rudram. So this has both a visarga here, followed by a sh sound. And then we have a anuswara combined with a ka sound. So how would you pronounce these two words together?
Namah Shankaraya.
That's it, exactly. So the visarga gets pronounced like a sh sound, and this anuswara is pronounced like nga because it's followed by the throat sound ka. Namah Shankaraya. Okay, so is everyone clear on those examples? If not, feel free to ask a question. Let's see, is there anyone else who feels comfortable to give these a try?
I can try, Bhagini.
Okay, all right. So you said you do look at Devanagari, so that's good. So if you were to, so notice that in this line, there's a danda at the end here. So how would you pronounce these three words?
Ramah khalu veeraha.
Good, exactly. That's exactly right. So what you have is here is the visarga followed by ka. So we get that strange jihva mulya sound, ramah khalu. Then we have a visarga that's at the end of a line. And so that gets pronounced as aha, viraha. Okay, so the full line is ramah khalu viraha. Very good. These two words are from one of the lines of Lalita Sahasranamam. So how would you pronounce these two words?
Paranjyotif parandhama.
Very good. So that's correct. We have anuswara followed by a j sound. So it becomes paranjyo, paranjyo. Then visarga followed by pa becomes jyotif param, jyotif param. And then we have anuswara followed by dha, which is a dental sound. So we get parandhama, parandhama. Okay, so that was very good. Okay, so please, if you raised your hand, please go ahead and ask your question.
Once, can you explain me why it is Paranjyotif?
So are you asking about the if sound?
Yes, yes. I'm a little confused.
Sure. So,
Thank you.
So the rule for pronunciation of visarga when it's followed by either pa or pa is that we pronounce that visarga as if sound. If. It's just a rule of pronunciation. It's not very sort of obvious, to the mind, but it's the rule of pronunciation in Sanskrit. When visarga is followed by pa or pa, it's pronounced as that if sound.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's just one of those things that we have to sort of memorize and get used to, and then it'll be all clear. And once again, if you can find a recording of the Chalakere brothers for something that you're, somewhat familiar with, or you have a copy in a script that you can read, listen to that and listen for these unique situations where visarga is followed by pa or visarga is followed by ka, and listen very carefully to how they're pronouncing it, because you'll hear the correct pronunciation. And you'll also be developing your ear. As we chant and as we learn the pronunciation, it's very important to develop our listening skills and our ability to hear the Sanskrit sounds. So in order to pronounce those sounds, we have to be able to hear them and identify them. And that doesn't happen right away for all of us. It really depends on, what kinds of things we heard when we were growing up as a 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid, right? Some of us, were hearing like Michael Jackson on the radio. Some of us were, listening to, Kausalya, Suprajarama, like, different things. What some of us were hearing, Dravida Vedam in Tamil. So depending on the sounds that we heard, it may be easy or it may be difficult to hear the Sanskrit sounds clearly. So we really need to work on listening skills and hearing the right sounds so that we can then produce them.
మనం తిందామా లేట్ అయిపోతుంది సమ్రాట్ ఏడైంది గంట లోపు నీకు డైజెస్ట్ అవ్వదు
Bhagini,
If you can just mute yourself.
unmuted, Bhagini.
కావాలంటే పడేద్దాం అక్కడ గడ్డి ఉందిగా అదే
Okay. All right, so hopefully that's all clear on Visarga in front of this pop sound. Okay, so that's everything that I wanted to do for Akshara Shuddhi. So that covers everything. And so now what I will do is move over to the next area of Matra Shuddhi. All right, so let's go into this. Oh, that should say session 2. Okay. All right. So when it comes to Matra Shuddhi, what we're talking about is rhythm and timing and the duration of how long we're holding different sounds according to the different rules. So remember, there are 3 areas that we're talking about when we're talking about correct Sanskrit pronunciation is Akshara Shuddhi, Matra Shuddhi, and Svara Shuddhi. Svara Shuddhi is only applying to Veda mantras, but the first 2 are what we look at for any Sanskrit mantra or stotram or anything like that. Okay. So in Matra Shuddhi, some of the common questions that we would have about this topic is how do we pronounce the mantras with the right rhythm? Because the rhythm is very important, and reciting in the same duration and timing is really critical when we're doing group chanting. Because especially for Veda mantras, they were always meant to be recited out loud as part of a group, in a group setting. And so when you've got more than one person chanting together, just on a practical basis, they all really need to be chanting together to get the right sound and the right energetic impression. So how do we get the right rhythm? What is this concept of holding that we say a lot of the time in classes, and how do we know where to apply that holding? How do we know what's the difference between a long vowel and a short vowel, so to speak, and why does that matter? All right. So what basically is a matra? It's something that is indicating a unit of time, and it's the very smallest unit of time. So it comes from the root ma, the Sanskrit root ma, which means to measure, to make or form something, or to limit something, to limit it in time or in space. So this is the same root that we get words like Maya and Matru, mother. So that's the same root from which we're also getting the word matra. So again, it's like a very small length of time, and we apply it to one short vowel. So the length of time that it takes to pronounce one short vowel. So technically, it's not like we can say it's 1.5 seconds is one matra. It's more of a relative time scale. So it's a unit that's going to give us a ratio of time. So I'll explain that next. But just to give a sense, like, why did I put these two pictures here? So up top, we've got a picture from Shivaratri in the temple where a number of Spartika, Shuddha Spartika, pure quartz crystal Shiva lingas are arranged in a certain way. So these are Shiva lingas made from quartz crystal that is totally clear and totally pure and without any cracks or lines or anything like that. And so we call that as Shuddhaspartika. So that phrase is also used to describe Lord Shiva, like Shuddhaspartika Sankasham Trinetram Panchavaktrakam. So this clear quartz crystal is given a lot of significance in the spiritual tradition. And then the image shown at the bottom on the left side, this is the structure of quartz crystal. So this is quartz crystal, and you can see it's a very, very regular shape. There are very precise distances between these different atoms of silicon and oxygen. So technically, this is just silicon dioxide. And if we look on the other side of this image, this is also silicon dioxide. It's also one, part silicon and 2 parts oxygen. But this is not going to be quartz crystal. This is going to be something like glass or sand. So you can see that some of these distances, like it's a very large ring or a small ring, they're kind of like not evenly shaped. So the way that I think of the timing of Sanskrit mantras is that the timing should have very precise relationships. And when that happens, the sound of the mantras is very, very pure and clear, just like a quartz crystal. So the same special properties that we get from Spartika, from this really beautiful, even and regular crystal structure, we will get that same kind of crystal clear quality when we chant with good attention to the timing, the rhythm, and the duration of the vowels, and so on. Okay, so that's why I put those 2 pictures there. That's just how I think of it. So this slide, you don't really need to, focus on this too intensely, but just to give a basic sense of what we're talking about with matras is that when we have a short vowel, and I'll explain that next, a short vowel will be pronounced for 1 matra, so, 1 period of time. A long vowel will be pronounced for twice as long as the short vowel. So however long you pronounce your short vowel, you need to pronounce a long vowel twice as long. Okay? So it's not like we can say 1 second or 2 seconds or 0.5 seconds and 1 seconds. It's a ratio. Okay? So it's a 1 to 2 ratio of how long we will say the hrasva or the short versus a long vowel. And I'll define that next. If we look at the consonants, we can say that that takes a half of a matra to pronounce. So I would not suggest that anybody, look at this and try to sort of calculate that in your heads. This is just to give the concept, just to give the basic idea. The real way that you'll get the rhythm is by listening and reproducing that sound. That's pretty much how most people are able to do that, is through listening. Okay, so when it comes to producing the right rhythm and attaining matra shuddhi, there are 2 principles that we need to understand and know how to apply it to any line of Sanskrit. So the first one has to do with the vowels, and the second one has to do with the consonants. So the first principle is that you need to understand the difference between a short vowel and a long vowel and the length of time to pronounce them. Okay? And short vowels, we use the term hrasva, and long vowels, we use the term dirgha. All right? The second principle is that we need to understand how to identify samyukta aksharas and how to apply holding to those samyukta aksharas. So samyukta means joined together. Akshara means a syllable. So in English, we could say a conjunct, something joined together, a conjunct syllable. This word holding, I'll just have to sort of demonstrate it. I don't know if there's any Sanskrit term for this, but this is what, all of the people who are knowledgeable about chanting, they'll just use this English word. So this is, these two principles are what you need to understand how to produce the right rhythm. Okay, so first we'll talk about the first principle that applies to vowels. All right, so if you look at, say, these two vowels and then the next, so I, and so on, they seem to be very similar, but there is this difference. So in English, you can see this bar is over all of these. So essentially, these are the short vowels. These are the ones known as short vowels. Let's see. I can turn on the laser pointer. So these are short vowels or hrasva vowels. And then the second column from A down to R, these are all dirgha or long vowels. And then if we look at these four over here, A, I, O, and Au, these are also long vowels, okay? When it comes to aha, anuswara, visarga, even though they're grouped with vowels, they're treated fairly differently, so I'm just going to ignore them for right now. So this slide is just showing a summary of what are the hrasva vowels and then what are the dirgha vowels. Okay. So I think, all right. So there's two aspects to the pronunciation of the vowels. One is the sound itself, and the other is how long we hold it. So very often when we're pronouncing vowels, like say we're doing puja, and there's a part in the puja where we're placing the vowels on one of the puja patras. Very frequently, if we're going, a little bit quickly, we'll say something like im, rum, rum, and so on. That's technically not really correct. To pronounce the vowels correctly, you need to make a different duration. So the way it sounds is im, rum, rum. Okay, so you can hear that the long vowels are being pronounced, about twice as long as the short vowels. So what I'll do to make it even more clear is I'm going to say all of these vowels in this list, and I'm going to clap my hands. And so just imagine that one clap is like one matra. Im, rum, 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 aim, I'm, aum. Okay, so is everyone, if you're not sure what I'm talking about with the timing, please let me know, but hopefully everyone is clear on not just the different vowel sound itself, like the difference between versus but also the length of time that we're taking to pronounce the vowels. So again, short vowels are pronounced for like one matra, we can say, and then the long ones are twice as long, or two matras, we can say, two beats in a sense. So hopefully that's all clear. And now if we talk about the second principle, we have to understand, so what is a samyukta akshara or a conjunct syllable? So any syllable or akshara that contains more than one consonant within it, more than one varna or individual Sanskrit sound, will be a conjunct or a samyukta akshara. So if you look at these examples, something like pra, shri, kru, shnu, idha, plu. It may be more clear if you look at the Devanagari, if you're familiar with that. So the key here is that so in English, two consonants are next to each other in the same syllable, two distinct consonant sounds. In the Devanagari, it will be, the combined characters. So one of the characters will be the half version, like this pra, shri, and so on. If it's Telugu, it's a similar thing where one of the letters will be like the half form or the secondary form. And in Tamil script, you'll have the two sounds next to each other, and the first one will have the little dot, the pulli, I think it's called, that indicates that it's joined with the next one. So that's how you know that a syllable is a sanyukta akshara. So if we look at this last line, these are not samyukta aksharas. So these are examples of a single consonant combined with a vowel. So things like pa, ta, bha, kr, and dr, or pl. So these ones are tricky. So in English, if you're using English, this is tricky because it looks like two different letters. But you have to remember that this is a single sound. It's the Mahaprana version of ba. So even though there's this extra letter here, this is one single Sanskrit varna. And then again here, this is the R vowel. So it looks like there's another consonant hanging here, but you have to remember the system of transliteration. This is the R vowel. This is the L vowel. Same thing down here in Devanagari. You just have to be really clear on which is the vowel version and which is the consonant version of either ra or la. Okay. So are there any questions on how to identify a samyukta akshara? Okay. All right, so let's go on. And so here we come to holding. So how do we apply holding when we see that there's a samyukta akshara? So when the samyukta akshara occurs in the middle of a line, we hold the first sound slightly longer. And so this creates a kind of doubling effect of that first sound. Okay, and we'll see what that means in the next example. And here's my important caveat, something that I mention frequently in the classes. Don't forget, there's still holding after dirgha vowels. So when I talk about holding after dirgha in the classes, this is what I'm referring to, that we still need to have that slight pause or slight doubling effect, even after a dirgha vowel, because many people will gloss over that and ignore that, which I myself did for many years because I didn't really understand. And finally, when it comes to anuswara and visarga, they also receive these holding rules. So when you're looking at a line, you want to look at these and sort of pretend that they're a consonant and then apply these holding rules. And this will be more obvious when we do the examples. But I just wanted to sort of list out the sort of holding rules in a clear list of points like this. Okay, so here are some examples of holding where it's happening within one word. So, all of you are familiar with all of these words or names. So if we look at this word chakra. So if you listen to the way I'm saying it, chakra, It sounds like we're doubling this ka sound. Chakra, chakra, right? If we look at another example, this word namaste, this sounds, if we look here, we have na is a regular syllable, single sound. Ma, again, single consonant. But then here, stay, this stay is a conjunct akshara or sanyukta akshara because the is and the it are combined in one syllable. So when we pronounce it, it becomes like namaste, namaste. Okay, so I'm exaggerating a little bit so that it's clear, but you can hear the sort of doubling effect on the first sound in the conjunct syllable. Okay, if we look at the name Rudra, Rudra, this sounds a bit like Rudra, Rudra. Okay, so those should all be pretty clear. But when we come to something like this next example, this is where many people, if they're using this name in like regular conversation, they'll say something like Katyayani, Katyayani. Whereas there needs to be a little bit more of holding on the it sound here. So if we look at the syllables, ka is a single consonant, but then tia is the conjunct syllable. So there needs to be some holding on this first sound. And so it ends up sounding more like katyayani, katyayani. Okay, so that's where like what you hear in regular conversation will be different from how you actually want to pronounce it during chanting. And with this name, again, people frequently will just say Akilandeshwari, Akilandeshwari, and it'll just roll off the tongue, but it's not really being enunciated clearly. This is more like Akhilandeshwari, Akhilandeshwari. Okay, so the a is being held, it's a dirgha vowel, and then we have holding on the urna, and then a is another dirgha vowel, and then we have holding on the ish in eshvari, eshvari. Okay, so this is Akhilandeshwari. So the way that we pronounce the Sanskrit sounds when we're chanting has to be very rhythmic and with a lot of attention paid to the timing. And so it's very different from how we might speak if we're just using these words in everyday conversation. And we really want to try to remember that. Okay, so now what we can do is take a look at a line that we're all familiar with and try to understand where are the dirgha vowels and where are the hrasva vowels. So is there anyone who wants to volunteer to give an answer of which of these vowels or which of these syllables have a dirgha vowel? Okay, so who is that? Is that Charu Auntie?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and tell me which of these syllables here have a dirgha vowel?
Shri,
Mm-hmm.
Mata,
Yes.
Shri,
Mm-hmm.
Ha,
Mm-hmm.
Ma is Hasva, Ha, Ra, Ni,
Good.
Shri, Ha,
Mm-hmm.
Ne, Ri.
Very good. Okay, so if we look at the next slide, it's just showing in the red color all of the dirgha vowels or all of the syllables that have dirgha vowels. Okay, so everyone can look at that and make sure that they understand the difference there. Okay, so now if we go back and now if you can tell me which are the syllables that are conjunct syllables.
Shri,
Mm-hmm.
both Shri, Gni,
Good.
Shri
Mm-hmm.
Nesh.
Mm,
No, sing.
not ne
No.
itself.
Ish.
The shva. Shva.
Yes.
So we look
ish.
at so shva is also a conjunct syllable. So
Yeah.
that's all good. But this is a bit of a trick question. So there are two other places that we think of as conjunct syllables and where we'll apply holding. And so those places are actually here,
Sing.
see, and this mha. It's difficult to pronounce some of these as individual syllables. But here what we're doing is remember that when we look at a line of Sanskrit, we look at the full entire line all together and almost ignore the spaces. So, the way they describe this is you need to chant syllable by syllable. So do syllable chanting. You're not going by word or grammar or anything like that. You're just like a computer. It's just like a code that's getting fed into your brain, which is the computer. You're ignoring all the spaces and you just look at sound, 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 sound. What's the order? What's the pattern? Are there two consonants next to each other? Are there not? And so on. So when we look at this as a string, an unbroken string of sounds, we see that here is a sound, a consonant, and right next to it, there's no vowel in between. So we're ignoring the space. There's no vowel, and here's another consonant. So that means there's going to be holding here as well. Even though it looks like two separate words, even if there was a dash here, a space, or anything, we ignore that. And we see that there are two consonants next to each other. That makes this a conjunct syllable. And then once again, here, this seems to be sim plus ha. But remember, the way we want to look at this is to pretend that this anusvara is a consonant and then apply the same holding rule here. So because this is combined with another consonant sound, this is also considered like a conjunct syllable, and we apply the holding here, simha, simha. Okay, so you can hear that there's a slight pause on this sound, simha. Okay, so if you listen to how this sounds, so I'll chant the line once and listen for all of the conjunct syllables. Actually, what I'll do is I'll go to this next slide. So this is showing all of the conjunct syllables in green. And listen to how I chant it and where you hear the holding. And keep in mind that when the conjunct is at the beginning, we don't apply any holding at the beginning. Okay? So I'll chant it once now. Shri Mata Shri Maharajni Shrimat Simhasaneshwari. So hopefully you were able to hear that there was holding applied here. Mata Shri, Ashri. And then again, there was holding here at the beginning of Ni, Ragni. And then again, Ragni Shri. So Ishri here. And then there's holding here, Mat, Matsim, Matsimha. So Shri Matsimha. Okay, so there's holding on the it here and on the im here. And then finally, there's holding on the ish in Neshpari, Neshpari. So again, this line is Shri Mata Shri Maharajni Shrimat Simhasaneshwari. Okay, So it does take some getting used to, because most of the time, if you go on YouTube and you look for a recording, and maybe the recording was done by, by a very talented singer, frequently they'll chant with pretty good pronunciation because of their training, but frequently they'll be missing holding in certain locations. So it might sound something like Shri Mata Shri Maharajni Shri Matsimhasaneshwari Eshwari. So they'll sort of skip over a lot of the holding places. Whereas when we are chanting, we want to make sure that we're following those guidelines for Matra Shuddhi as carefully as we can. So that's where we have to apply a little bit of analysis to the lines and a little bit of sort of extra practice. And once again, I can't recommend strongly enough listening to recordings of the Chalakere brothers, because they have mastered each and every aspect of all of these rules of chanting, and they demonstrate it with a really remarkable clarity that's very hard to achieve. Even if I practice and I focus very carefully, it's not so easy to actually pronounce all of these words with all of the rules being followed perfectly. It's not easy to do that, even if I understand it intellectually and I've practiced. Whereas the Chalakere brothers have mastered that to a tremendous degree. Okay. All right. So that's an example using Lalita Sahasranamam. Okay. So now what I'll do is just focus a little bit on how holding applies to Visarga and Anuswara. So again, remember that we're going to sort of pretend it's a consonant. And how do we apply holding there? So if we look at the first example, this is a very typical thing in Vedic chants, where you'll see this word Shantihi repeated 3 times, and then there's it at the end of a line. So keep in mind that the visargas in the first 2 will be pronounced differently from how it is at the end, because these 2 are coming in the middle of a line, and this one is coming at the end. So the way that we pronounce it is kind of the way it's written here. And because this is being treated as a consonant, we can see that this becomes another conjunct. So if we analyze this, we've got a conjunct here, this nti, and then we also have a conjunct here. We can think of this as 2 consonants next to each other. And same thing here. And then we just have like a regular visarga coming at the end of a line. So this phrase will become Shantish, Shantish, Shantihi. Shantish, Shantish, Shantihi. Okay. Now, if we look at the next example, so this is from the Dhyana Shloka from Lalita Sahasranamam. So these words like Vigraham, Trinayanam are ending in Anuswara. And not only that, it's after a Dirgha vowel. And they're followed by different sounds. So in this case, it's followed by a ta sound. And in this case, it's followed by a ma sound. And remember, we're going to pretend or treat this Anuswara as a consonant. So that means that this is a conjunct akshara. At least that's how we're seeing it. And this is also. Okay, so the way that we would pronounce this is Vigrahan Trinayanam Marnikya. Han Trinayana. Han Trinayana. Nayanam Marnikya. Am Marnikya. So hopefully you can hear the holding that I'm applying on the Anuswara because it's followed by another consonant. So Vigrahan Trinayanam Marnikya. Okay. So any questions on how we handle Visarga and Anuswara? Everyone's very quiet. Okay. All right. So I'm actually going to stop there. Stop sharing. Okay, so I will stop there. So that's the basics of Matra Shuddhi is those two rules. It's really, it's simple, and yet each line is slightly different with the pattern. So that's the tricky part. So the two rules are pretty easy to understand, and yet applying them to each and every line of a Sanskrit stotram, or mantra, that's where it gets tricky because it could be so many different combinations of sounds. And so that's where you really need to understand the Varnamala and recognize which is the vowel, which is the consonant, which is the hrasva vowel, which is a dirgha vowel, which is, two consonants coming in a single syllable. So these are the sort of skills that we need to develop. So some things that you can do maybe on your own is if you can take a printout of something that, you're familiar with it, or maybe it's something that you've always wanted to learn, and use different colored pens or highlighters to mark different things in different colors. Like you could circle all of the dirgha vowels. You could highlight all of the cases where there's holding after dirgha. So take some time to really analyze the line. And you won't have to do that forever. It's not like you'll spend the rest of your life having to analyze each and every line. It'll become much more natural. But in the beginning, when you're not used to the concept yet, it is a really good idea to sort of take it as a homework assignment and actually analyze some practice lines, because you're building those skills in your brain of recognizing the different types of Sanskrit sounds and the different combinations that can happen, and understanding how is Anuswara treated in this example, how is Visarga pronounced in this location. Those are things that it's just a skill that you can build and you can work on and get better. And it just takes a little bit of time and practice. So I do recommend, doing a little bit of like homework at some point, where you analyze some lines and look for those situations. Also, doing a kind of Likita Japam of things, like say there's a suktam that you want to learn, like Durga Suktam. Take some time and write, take a good copy, a very accurate copy from a good publication, and write the suktam out by hand and do it just one or two times, because there's something about the process of writing that really helps your brain to focus on the details and to really take in the details in a meaningful way than if you're just looking at it or looking on a screen or something like that. So this is what I used to do, because I could only find the Devanagari versions of things, and I can't chant from Devanagari. It's too slow. So I have to transliterate it into the English first before I can start learning. And so that forced me to, go in my Mantra Pushpam book, first find what it was that I was hearing and really wanted to learn, whatever I was obsessed with at the moment. And write it out by hand, because at that time there were no fonts that I had access to. There was none of these Aksharamukh, like online conversion utilities. None of that existed. None of these things were online either. So you had to find a book in a dusty bookstore somewhere in a corner of India. And find this stuff. And so that I found that practice of writing things out and transliterating myself was very useful in really focusing on the sounds. So those are some of the kinds of things that you can do as your own way of sort of drilling these, really taking these principles within yourself and within your consciousness, so that you can internalize them and make them even more natural. And then again, just, learning and practicing and listening repeatedly will also help with that internalizing process. And that's the best
So, Amma,
advice I can give.
I have a question. Is it
Sure.
okay if we take probably like maybe 1 or 2 lines of Lalita Sahasranamam, try to do it as a homework and send it in the group? Will you be able to correct
Absolutely.
it?
Sure. So yeah, you can take something, whatever you choose and, do your analysis, like finding all the dirgha vowels, finding all the conjunct syllables, things like that, and send it to me and I'm happy to look at it.
Thank you, Amma.
Sure, no problem. And if anybody has any questions about pronunciation, you can also record yourself and send it to me and ask a question if you're still not feeling comfortable to do that audibly. That's no problem. You can record yourself and send that. And I'm happy to answer any questions. So if anyone has any other questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, for the next time, I'll just do a little bit of review on Matra Shuddhi next time, just to make sure, we haven't forgotten about it. And then I'll get into the final area, which is Svara Shuddhi. Svara Shuddhi. So that's what is really critical for Vedic chanting. One other small thing that I'll just mention is I mentioned about hrasva and dirgha vowels as the 2 timing options. Technically, in Vedic chanting, there's also a longer one, which is called pluta. But that's not very common at all. And mainly I've seen it in Rigveda suktas. And that's where you hold a vowel for about 3 matras. So it's like when you get into different kinds of Vedic chanting, there are places where you hold a vowel for even longer than the regular dirgha. Even a dirgha swarita situation, you're sort of doubling a dirgha vowel as well. So that's all different. But the basics are to understand hrasva and dirgha. But I did just want to mention that pluta also exists in there somewhere. All right, so any questions on whatever we've done up until now?
The
We
class
will have
was
to review
really
it.
good. It is like going to first grade or kindergarten learning from A. Wish we did it.
Everyone was very quiet, so I was a little worried,
No,
am I
it was
explaining this? Am I making sense
no,
or
it was
what?
clear. That's why. If I don't know how
Okay.
doubt, we
Also,
would have.
the brain was trying to process it.
Yeah, so everyone's just trying to take it in. So okay, everyone was
It
just
was
focusing and concentrating.
it was
That's
clear
good.
because we learned everything. Now we're going back instead of learning, they know how to
Yeah.
sing it, but we
Yeah. So
know how to chant. We got it, learning the Mahatmya.
yeah.
Now it is
And
making sense.
right. So the problem is during the classes, I'll be using terms to, explain things. And then, some people might have known already about that. Other people, if they're new to the classes, they might not really understand, but they probably feel like they don't want to ask in the middle of a class, what are you talking about? What does that word mean? So I figured it's a good idea to just take some time to explain the terms that are used during the classes and the underlying principles so that the ways of understanding that sort of exist underneath those terms. So that was the idea for doing this.
We might still have to go through a recording 1 or 2 times to totally get it still.
Yeah, it's very natural, especially if this is new. And again, it really depends because there are some people that if they were born in very traditional families that are, very much immersed in, the Vedic culture, they would have been listening to these sounds since their childhood. And like I'm sure we've all seen on Instagram and YouTube, like little clips of like tiny, tiny little kuttis, belting out some Vedic mantra. And it's just because they heard it and they absorbed it and now they can just, spit it out. because when we're young at that age, and this is why they take kids and put them in the Veda Pathashalas at a very young age, because they know that's the time when the brain is so absorbing. It's so open to absorbing sounds and learning language and sounds. Once we get out of that window, it's, definitely not as easy. So that's when we have to sort of think analytically about it. That's when I have to explain all of these things. If we were kids and hearing this stuff, we would just absorb it just from the sound alone. We wouldn't have to like analyze and think, oh, raspa dirga, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of the issue that we're facing. So for people who grew up, hearing really good Sanskrit chanting, these things will be second nature to them. And 99% of us do not fall into that category. So for the rest of the 99% of us, obviously I was not hearing these things as a small child.
We probably heard it, but we don't want, because now we're going through the actual basics of how to chant. We don't want to go back and make the same mistakes we were making all these years. So that's why we
Right,
have to go and analyze a little bit.
That's the other thing, we have to work a little bit harder because, like I was saying in some of the examples, many of the names and words we've heard in just very common casual conversations, people saying things in different ways. And so many, very talented people have made recordings, and it's beautiful, and it gives us such a wonderful feeling. But it's still not 100% correct pronunciation or chanting. So we grow up with those beautiful recordings, and even there, it's not giving us the 100% correct version. And that's why I sound like I'm just repeating the same thing, Chalakere brothers, over and over again, but there's no, like, that is the way. There is no other easy way to really get the 100% fully authentic pronunciation. So that's the other thing, is like you were saying, we have to analyze more. What I would say is, in addition, we have to listen more to the 100% accurate recordings. So, I would say if you're learning something, like you want to learn Purusha Suktam or Rudram or whatever it is, at least once every day, at least once, preferably multiple times a day, listen to the Chalakere recording. Slow it down if you have to, or speed it up if you want, but listen to it multiple times, because you need the sounds to sort of burn into your brain. That will combine with the analytical understanding and give you the best progress. But we have to train and educate the brain to hear those correct sounds. So listen as much as possible to the very highly accurate chanting is my other advice. All right, so that's good for tonight. So I will add materials into the classroom tomorrow morning for me. So that'll be available soon. But otherwise, just practice whatever you can. If you feel like doing some homework, feel free. And then we'll do Svara Shuddhi in the next class. All right, so thanks everyone
Thank
for
you, Amma.
joining.
Thank you. Namaste.